Welcome to the Sisterhood of Healing podcast, the podcast that wants to help you reach your best and most divine potential. Each week, we dive into topics concerning inner healing, wellness, and spirituality. We discuss strategies and practice from our own personal experiences regarding higher energies, trauma, and connecting to the divine as we take you through our own personal journeys to discover the highest versions of ourselves. In combination with guest speakers, we bring you a comprehensive guide to mental and spiritual wellness and the ability to connect to yourself and the world around you on a deeper level. I'm Nicole, and I'm Christina, and we are two sisters who want to take you along on our spiritual and healing journey. We are each on our own individual healing and spiritual path and bring unique perspectives regarding yoga, chakra healing, meditation, intuition, and trauma healing. Sometimes life is messy, sometimes it's confusing, and sometimes everything falls perfectly into place. Join us as we navigate the path to divine enlightenment together. Hello, sisters, brothers, and non-binary listeners to the Sisterhood of Healing podcast. Welcome to Season 3, Episode 1. On today's episode, we're going to be talking with Sara Lindstrom and talking about breaking free from unconventional narrative. So welcome, Sara.
Thank you.
It's so nice to have you on Season 3. You're officially our first guest of this season.
It's so exciting.
So we'll jump right in. If you can just get us started on just introducing yourself, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
All right. So I'm from the far north of Sweden. I live right by the Arctic Circle. I'm a photographer. I work mostly freelance, and I've been doing like destination travel photography and outdoor lifestyle for the past decade or so. Approaching a decade. And today I also host retreats and workshops up here around photography, obviously, and like sisterhood and just like being in nature and just creating this really cool space for people from all over the world. So yeah, that's a bit about where I am right now. And I don't know how far back you want to go, but
yeah, no, we'll get into it and we'll unpack some things. But that sounds pretty cool. I love the retreats. I love the sisterhood retreats. Are they all? I mean, I'm assuming because you said sisterhood. Are they female only retreats? Female only photography retreats?
So far, yeah, they've been only for people who identify as women. It's kind of just happened that way, and I just love that whole group dynamic, so I've continued, and like they loved it as well, and it's just so special. And I think it's not that much out there that's just like for women, for photography and this whole combination of things. So it's kind of why I stuck to it.
That's so great. I've never met anyone that does photography just for women and focuses on that, and I think it creates like such a great community too, and such a great community where like you can just feel vulnerable to like try new things. I think photography can be a scary thing because you can take a picture and you're like, this looks great, but then someone who actually knows what they're doing, they're like, maybe not so much. So it's so great to like learn that skill and be vulnerable in a container where everyone's kind of in the same boat and everyone's being supportive. I think that's so beautiful.
Yeah, no, 100%.
So what's your origin story? Like, how did you become like someone who travels and sets up these retreats and a photographer? Like, where did it all begin?
All right. So that goes back until I was like 19, the first time I left home alone. I just had this sort of inborn curiosity since I was really young, wanting to see the world. And yeah, I mean, I'm from a place that's very far from sort of the rest of the world. It's just like it's sort of the end of, far away from everything, basically. So the first thing I did was to head to New York after I graduated high school, which is basically the opposite from where I'm from. But I just wanted like contrast and complete something different. So yeah, I went there for a couple of weeks, and I came back home basically traumatized because I I'm not built for cities. I'm not meant for it. So I went back home and like readjusted, and then ended up going to Arizona for 3 months and just like volunteering and working in the national parks around there. And that's when I first got into the whole outdoor scene and like started camping and being in the wild. And that just blew my mind, like being thrown together in these groups with kids from all over Europe and just living in the wild for, a week at a time and just road tripping all over Western US. And yeah, I felt so alive doing that. So after that, I was basically hooked and kept traveling for, I think, 2-3 years before I even knew what I wanted to study, because I knew I wanted to go to university. I just didn't know what I wanted to study. But then quite naturally, I chose geography and environmental studies. Also, but like mainly maybe because it allowed me to travel and like do exchange semesters and field courses. And I basically spent half my 4 years at university abroad. So it was perfect for me. Yeah. And then eventually I told myself I had to settle when I graduated. So yeah, like by the time I graduated, I told myself that I had to grow up and like get serious and, settle down, get the house, get the man, and, but there was this yearning in me that like, I just wanted to go for 1 more year. Like I really wanted to wash the nomad out of my system. I thought I could do that. So I did like a few months working for the government right after graduating. So it was like a job really associated to what I studied. So it was great and kind of fun and really nice, but just not exciting. So I was like saving up to go on this trip for another year. But I told myself to be safe, I had to, work a few more months and like really save up properly so I could, go and have enough money. But then my boyfriend at the time broke up with me, and I just got so angry that I said like, fuck it, and just booked a one-way ticket to Peru. Like I just went basically right away. I'm like, either it's gonna work or it's not gonna work, and then I can just come back home and like figure out a way forward. So I did that. I took the money I had, booked that one-way ticket, and I didn't really had a very clear plan. I just knew that I wanted to travel north and eventually make my way to Canada and maybe even Alaska. And I wanted to travel by land and sea, like not take any flights, because I really just wanted to see all these countries in between. And I wanted to take photos. I knew that, like it was a passion already at that time. I really loved traveling and taking photos. But like the idea of doing it professional was still like too far away. But then I guess like halfway through on that trip is when I just stopped for a moment and like realized how incredibly happy I was just doing what I did, like traveling, meeting new people and eating amazing food and just like experiencing new things and taking pictures. So it was like slowly building a portfolio. And I'm like, I remember looking down at my shoes and they had big holes in them, and I was like, okay, I've never been so low on money in my life, but I've also never been so happy. Like I was vibrating with happiness, just so alive. So that's when I just suddenly asked myself, it was like someone slapped me in the face, like, Sarah, what are you doing? Like, why would you go back home and live a boring life when there is so much more out there? And I somehow knew I wanted to do photography for a living. And at that moment, I was also realizing I didn't just want to do any kind of photography. I wanted to do exactly what I did there. I just travel and explore and capture the beauty of different places and cultures. And it was like with that, doors I didn't know existed started to open, and I continued traveling, and I stretched it to 1 year on the little money I had. I still don't really know how I did it, but it's just like things fell in place, and it's, magic happens when you're determined and you get creative. Yeah. So by the time I got back home, or actually I made it to Canada. So I made it to Canada and I fell in love with the Rockies. And that's when I realized like I have to come back here. Then I was really like out of money. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to go back to Europe, work for a few months, save up, and then come back and get the working holiday visa. But then it was somewhere around there that I had like randomly reached out to a few massive travel companies, just like I didn't know any better. Like with the skills I have today, or like what I know today, I would never have done that because it's like just such a huge shortcut. Normally like work your way up and get an education. That's like, nah, I'm just gonna ask them if they're photographers. So one of them actually got back to me and they were like, well, next time you're around in Sweden, just come by the head office in Stockholm and we'll talk. So yeah, long story short, next time I was in Stockholm, I went by. I didn't have like super high hopes, but they basically offered me my dream job right away and asked me if I wanted to go to Greece and shoot a destination for them and pay the kind of money that I'd never seen in my life. And I'm like, is this happening? So yeah, that's kind of how my photography journey professionally started. And then I kind of been bouncing back and forth between Canada and Europe since, and well, travel a little in between. I've lived in New Zealand for a year and in France and so on, but I always had a strong relationship with Canada, like loving it so much. It's like very, very special to me. The Rockies, like I've never felt anything like it. But to add to that now also with the pandemic, like I've really fallen in love with Sweden. Like I never had that before and I'm so grateful for it. Like and being forced to stay put and like really get to know this place and its people and its landscapes. And that's why I'm also so passionate today to do these retreats, like to bring people here and like show them all the beauty we have here, because it's still a quite unknown corner of the world, I think.
Yeah, I really think it is. I love that story. I love how you just followed your heart, and in the end, like the most amazing thing happened for you. Like you just trusted your heart, trusted what you wanted to do, and then eventually it all worked out and you were placed exactly where you needed to be, doing exactly what was most authentic to you.
It's just so beautiful how it unfolds.
What was it about? I'm interested because we grew up in a rural area in Canada. Like the town was close, but the town was small. And so if you put me in a city, I'm the same way too. I'm like, it's nice to visit, but I couldn't live in a hustle bustle like big city. What was it for you that you didn't like about New York? Like what made you kind of like run away from it and run to a place that was more nature centered?
Well, I mean, I wasn't aware of it at the time, but I think I've always been a very sensitive soul and just, you know, all the impressions and like the people and energies and like the noise, it was just too much for my senses. And I remember coming back home and I was like, what's wrong with me? Because people asked me like, oh my God, you went to New York, it must have been so cool. And I'm like, yeah, it was pretty cool for like 5 minutes. And because I mean, it's a really cool city and I did enjoy it, but it was also really, really overwhelming. And I needed that experience to realize that and to learn that it's not for me. And that's why I made a complete like 180-degree turn and like went to the wild instead. Like it's basically the opposite from New York.
Into Arizona, and Arizona felt like more natural to you, like this is where I'm supposed to be. And
yeah, so much. Like I felt ecstatic. It was fantastic. And because I didn't grow up with the outdoors at all, it was new scene to me. But yeah, just I knew I had to go. When I first read about that program, it was just really, it was so clear to me that I had to go. I was super scared, super scared. I'm like, what am I doing? But in the end, like so incredibly happy I did go.
It all worked out. So you like pushed yourself outside of your comfort zone and then here you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. It was like the first big step, I guess.
Yeah, I would say so. Well, to leave your country and to go somewhere else where there's people from all over the world, it's like, you know, different laws, different landscape, different, like, and Arizona is quite the different landscape to what I imagine Sweden would be. I've never been to Sweden, but I know it's definitely different from Canada. So yeah, wildly different, but you felt good there, which is incredible, which is good.
Yeah.
I love that. So how did it feel when How did it feel for you? So you went to school, like you said, you felt like you always wanted to go to university, but then after university, you felt like you would like settle down and find a partner and like do all the conventional things. How did it feel like that moment where you decided to like break from the unconventional narrative? Like, can you walk us through that process? Like, what did it feel like for you? Like, what were some of the actions you took? Like, did you have any self-doubt? How did that look?
Yeah, I mean, once I had that epiphany, or like where I suddenly question everything, it was just so clear. I'm like, duh, like why would I? Like, what's wrong with me? Like, why would I, listen to other people and what society is telling me? Like, this is not what I want. But I guess when you're so in it, like programmed from since you're a young girl, like this is sort of the way you're supposed to walk. It was so deep. And I mean, I'm still sort of peeling layers off and like, always stopping to think like, is this me or is it what other people want? And like just really being mindful about that. But yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. And I think it's good too that like you're constantly checking in, like, is this what is this what feels right to me? Is this where I'm supposed to be? Because I think I find myself sometimes where I'll go like weeks at a time without checking in, and then I realize I've just kind of been like going with the flow. I'm like, hang on a second, you gotta take a step back. Like, why am I feeling this way right now? Is it most authentic to me? So yeah, I think that's really important to always do those like midpoint check-ins. And
Yeah, absolutely.
so you said you split your time between Canada and Sweden. How has that helped with like your development as a photographer, like your development as a person? Like, how has that impacted your journey living in like two very different places, but two places that it sounds like you absolutely love?
That's a good question. I mean, Canada definitely pushed me deeper into the outdoors and like more extreme sports and into alpine climbing and backcountry skiing and all that sort of stuff and that scene. And I mean, my photography has been evolving all along the journey. And I guess like when I went to Europe, it was mostly for work. So I would go home for like a week and do an assignment, and then go back to Canada and edit. And I mean, there was a lot of traveling in between too. As I mentioned, like I lived in New Zealand for a year, and but I always been sort of driven by my longing to go deeper into the mountains. And yeah, I really lived for the mountains for so many years, and just pushing harder and climbing higher mountains. And yeah, it was really my life, especially climbing, like rock climbing. So it was always a combination of, I always had my camera, obviously, and it really helped me develop that side of photography, sort of the action outdoor lifestyle bit. And yeah, but then there was a shift, and I'm a lot softer today, which has been really interesting. Like I can really feel sorry.
How so?
Yeah, I don't know. I just kind of hit a wall a few years ago. It was before the pandemic, and I was about to do this dream climbing trip through the Western US and Canada with a friend from Austria who came over, and we had it all planned out and we were so excited. And I remember my body was kind of breaking down because I had some minor injuries from before, and my doctor told me like, you should chill. And I'm like, are you crazy? I'm not gonna stop now. Like, I love this. And I kept pushing. And then a week in on this trip, I just got a really bad cold. And once I got better from that, I just didn't have the stoke anymore. It was so weird. It was like suddenly, like when I wouldn't listen to my body, it was like my mind caught up, and suddenly I just didn't. I wanted to sit in coffee shops and read books, and I never read books before. Like it wasn't my thing. And suddenly, like I was longing to sit in like a city. Even it was really, really strange. But just this shift, I guess, what we go through in life, like it's not always the same. We change, and it's been an interesting and beautiful journey to follow that and see how it has evolved.
That's so
So yeah.
interesting. It's so interesting too how you, like you said, like your mind's like, no, you need to stop. You need to rest because you're not listening to your body. Like we need to listen to our bodies more.
Yeah. It's like you're grounded.
I'm so curious where, okay, so do you spend most of your time, just because we're from Canada, and during the pandemic too, like you explored Sweden. I spent time exploring Canada, which I'd never done before because it was always so expensive and it was cheaper for me to head over to Europe. But so that was the first time I really explored Canada. And like you in Sweden, I love this country now, but I like the East. That's my favorite. It sounds like you spend a lot of your time out west in the mountains.
Yeah, exactly. Because as I said, like I was in love with the mountains, and I've been out east in Canada as well, and it reminds me a lot about Sweden. It's actually really similar in many ways, and it's beautiful, but it's just something with the Rockies. Like first time I drove through, like 10 years ago, I basically cried. Like I was so touched by the beauty. It's like something about the rock formations. Like I've never experienced anything like it. I mean, there are so many beautiful mountains in the world, but it's something about the energy, the spirit. I don't know, but
Yeah.
I always feel like a part of me belongs there.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Everyone I talk to that goes out west, they just fall in love with the mountains. Like everyone says the same thing. Like there's just something about it out there. I don't know. I actually was recently driving through them like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and like there's something just so, I don't know, it's hard to wrap your head around that type of beauty. And I think it's really cool that you get to capture that with your photography, and like help to communicate that to other people, because yeah, it definitely is some I don't even have words for it. It's a type of energy that you need to see in order to feel and experience properly, but like you're able to capture that, and I think that's such a gift that you're giving to the rest of the world.
Yeah, and I seriously cannot wait to go back. I'm heading back in 2 weeks, first time in 4 years almost. It's insane because I was just going to be back home for a few months when the pandemic happened, and yeah, I've been here ever since. But I'm so excited to see how I'm going to feel about it now, because now I have this new relationship with Sweden. But I always sort of had this dream or vision of living a little bit there, at least spend a few months every year in Canada, and then having a base here as well. And now since I'm doing my retreats, that's the one of the reasons I'm going there, is to look for locations to do a future retreat in some of my favorite places there. So I'm very excited about that as well.
So nice. Are you do you venture out into Alberta or BC?
Well, I've been mostly based in the Bow Valleys of Banff, Canmore, so a lot around there, but also BC. I usually always go out to the coast and got friends in Squamish and sort of all over BC. So I won't be in one place all the time.
Okay, so you told us about your retreats and you've mentioned them, but I'm really excited to hear a little bit more about them. So could you tell us and tell the listeners what they could expect from your retreats, what they're all about? Give us a few more details.
Yeah, for sure. So I haven't been doing it for very long, but it's been a beautiful journey. But basically, so I've only been doing them in Sweden so far, and up here in the north by the Arctic Circle where I live. And they're all about getting close to nature, and some of them are wilder than the other. So I've done like one concept that's more for beginner photographers who really want to learn to handle their cameras, and another one that's more just about hiking and exploring and being in the mountains. But what they all have in common is that they're not all about photography. It's so much more about, I would say like 50-50 about photography, and also the whole sisterhood and like being outside and like sense of community and learning. So one of my retreats up in the mountains have been at this amazing host, a good friend of mine who is Sami, so the indigenous people of northern Scandinavia, and he has this gorgeous eco camp in the middle of nowhere, which is just really magical. And out there, you're obviously close to the mountains, so we do a lot of hiking. This depends on the season too, but I did one last September, also one in November. And we had like incredible northern lights every night basically. And yeah, just cooked over the fire outside and like got to taste this amazing traditional Sami food and learn about their culture, sit around the campfire and like go cold plunging and sit in the sauna and just be. Yeah, that kind of gives you an idea. But it's like, obviously, since it's been up here in the north, it's a lot about the Arctic lifestyle and like those typical things to do. And this winter, I'm planning to do one that's more with even more activities, like go dog sledding and go snowmobiling maybe. But yeah, anything that brings you closer to nature.
Wow, those are like really cool experiences. Do you find that your clientele are people who like choose to live more of a nomadic lifestyle, or are they just kind of like bringing their camera, going on a vacation? Like, do you find that there's a lot of similarities in their lifestyles with yours?
Maybe people who dream more about, not to say like to be like me, but I mean, what I've seen from my previous participants is like women who they work a lot and they might have families and they just really realize they need a break and invest in some time for themselves and just like learn and be around other women, like-minded people, and just to get that digital detox and like slow down and yeah, get a moment to just be by yourself, because there's a lot of space for, you know, self-reflection and just being on your own, and like you don't have to be with a group as well. So I'd say it's more like that, maybe not so many nomads in that sense, like similar to the way I've lived my life, but yeah, I can see them being quite inspired about living a bit more freer and wilder and not following the traditional path so much.
Yeah, it sounds like people are given an opportunity to kind of just slow down and reflect and just get like a different perspective on things or on life. You had mentioned like earlier when we were talking that like you had like your government job and like you felt like you were like checking off like all of these boxes and like doing what you needed to do. So like now you're living more authentically. How do I want to say this? Like, do you feel that following your heart? Oh, how do I want to frame it? Now I'm like lost for words. You know what? We can pause here. Let me think about it. Let me think if I can reframe it differently.
Sure.
So in what ways did you follow your heart, and what have the impacts of that been in your life or on your life?
It had all the impact. I mean, it's basically everything I told you. It's just that I guess I decided from an early age to, well, I don't know if I decided, but I did follow my heart from an early age. And then when I took that decision, when I was in Central America, traveling up to Canada, I just made a decision to make it my priority to always follow my heart. And I've been trying to do that ever since, like, and as I mentioned, just to stop every now and then and listen within, like, is this what I really want? And become quite good at that. It's not like I don't listen to other people, but I mean, when it comes to making decisions, I want to make sure it's coming from what I want and what my heart is longing for.
Mm-hmm. I love that, leading from the heart.
Yeah.
Did you face any obstacles or any roadblocks, or at any point in your journey did you feel were you afraid that what you were doing was not the right thing, or were you afraid that like maybe you were making the wrong choice?
Maybe like leading up to that trip to Peru and, you know, traveling north, Well, yeah, I mean, up until that point, I was really, as I told you, I thought I had to go down this normal path that everybody went down. But
At any point in like this journey, when you were trying to build a life that was authentic to what your heart was calling you towards, at any point did you think, oh no, I'm doing the wrong thing, oh no, I shouldn't be doing this, I shouldn't have done that, I should have just gotten a job, stayed home, had the standard life? Or did you always feel like you were on the right path? Like, how did that look?
I guess I had my doubts, when things have been hard, but since that stuff happened after that trip and I got offered this dream job, it was just such a clear sign that sort of the universe is just like pointing me in one direction, and just feeling that support from taking that big leap and just following my heart. It's been something I always return to when I need a reminder of like the importance of following my heart. So yeah, sure, I may have had my doubts for sure, but not enough to change my mind about the way I'm living. And like, I feel it so strongly, that I'm passionate about what I'm doing and photography and all that. So there might have been times, especially during the pandemic, when things were hard, and like, because basically, 95% of my income got cut overnight because I was working in the travel industry doing destination photography for travel companies, and suddenly there was no travel anymore. And there were many times when I thought like, oh, maybe I should just get a normal job and, make things easy. But there was such a strong no in me. Like I knew there was a way around it. So I haven't gotten a 9 to 5 since, which, it could have made my life a lot easier. And it's not like I couldn't like go back to just doing photography later, but it was still, a part of me knew that I should just focus entirely on what I love, and something beautiful would grow out of that. And that's kind of how, back again to the retreats, how that started, because that's how the idea got born and so on. And just spent all my time traveling around northern Sweden and discovering all these places and people, and one thing led to the other, instead of being in town all 5 days a week and like not being able to travel, because I had that job. So yeah. It's hard to go back to sort of conventional living when you've tasted a different reality, and how high that can make you. So
I'm curious, like, did you have the support from your family and friends back home in Sweden when you were like, hey, like, this is what I want to do, like I want to start traveling after high school? Or were they like, no, like you should stay home and go to school and get a job?
Well, it's actually, I'm really grateful, first of all, for my parents. They're amazing. My mom, she freaked out first time when I went to Arizona. She thought I was gonna not come back home, die in some desert somewhere. But I guess like since I got my university degree, it's like my parents, at least, they have not cared. They've just been really happy and supportive, as long as I can make a living whatever way. And I can tell that they're quite happy that I'm doing it in a way that I really enjoy and love. And for other people, like, I guess I had quite good support. And maybe that's also something that came with this whole like heart-centered living path. Like I wouldn't keep people around that would tell me I should live in a different way. So the friends that stuck around are the ones that I just, totally fine not seeing me in 6 months or a year, and then when we meet again, it's like no time passed. So very grateful for that. And also another part is that in Sweden it's quite normal to take all these gap years, like not going straight to university, so that helped too, for sure.
That's very interesting, because I feel like here in Canada, like it's the complete opposite. Like people, or like parents will force their kids to go to school. Like they don't care like what their kid is doing. They like just want them to go to school. Like it doesn't matter if they have interest in that topic, just go to school.
Yeah. I met so many American and Canadian kids that told the same story of how they just like rushed into some sort of degree, and then 5 years later it's like, why did I even choose that? I didn't know what I wanted to study, and now I have all this debt, so I have to spend the rest of my life working. Yeah, it's very, very important.
Yeah, exactly. Especially in the States. It's so expensive in the States too.
Yeah.
I can't believe the amount of debt that they acquire going to school. It's incredible. And so if you don't have the opportunity to follow your heart or like take those chances before school, then it becomes really difficult to do that after. I think when people become tied down to like their jobs and mortgage, and they feel like they can't leave. But I think like you've shown in your journey, like just taking those risks and taking those chances has so much reward. Like I give you so much credit, and you said, you're like, well, I wasn't supposed to do it this way, but I did it when you messaged the companies, the travel companies, and then someone messaged you back, and this the most beautiful opportunity came of it. And I think that's so brave. And like, what did you have to lose? They said no, but one company actually said yes, and it completely changed your whole life. So sometimes just those small decisions, or just learning to say yes, or just saying like, well, I got nothing to lose, so like, let's give it a try, makes all the difference. And clearly it has for you.
Yeah, or just think out of the box. Because as I think I mentioned, is that if I would have gone to school, I would probably have thought entirely differently around it. Like you just don't do that. It's kind of cutting the line in a way. And I met photographers since who like spent 5 years studying photography. I never studied it. Like I just took a beginner's course once in South Africa, and then it's been all passion and learning by doing. People spending all this time and investing money into degrees, and then like they can't even get a job, so they have to start working in I don't know, somewhere else. And then here I come along and just like I'm this banana peel straight to the dream job. And it's to me, I mean, I don't think my journey is like that I was lucky in any way. I think it's just sort of the way that the universe works. Like you're being rewarded by being brave and just taking those leaps of faith.
Yeah, I agree with you there too. Because people will say to others, you're lucky, this, that. What I 100% agree with you is that you are taking those leaps of faith, and I think when you do that, you're opening yourself up to what the universe actually has in store for you, and like where you're meant to be. And it's been so incredible, and I love your journey. I just think it's so amazing that you followed your heart, and here you are. And like you're sharing this with other people, and you have the opportunity to do that. I think it's so great. Honestly, I think your program is so great. I was going to ask you, when does your next one start, and where is it, or what are the plans for the future of your retreats?
Right. So yeah, I'll be in Canada all fall until basically mid-December. So it's going to be, that's all planning for the future. But my next retreat will probably be in February. I'm planning a longer one, and then I have one for sure in like first weekend of March. And maybe another one in the fall next year in the mountains of Sweden. And then like fingers crossed, I'll have my Canadian retreat ready to go next fall as well, or at some point, like maybe early October or something. That would really be a dream come true.
Well, I'll keep my eyes out for that one, because that sounds absolutely amazing.
Nice.
So a couple final questions before we leave. So if you could leave our listeners with one piece of advice, what would that piece of advice be? Something that you've learned along your journey, or something that you feel really strongly about. What would that piece of advice be?
Listen to your heart. It's like, just tune in, like stop and listen within. Really. It's
a simple concept, but so few people actually do that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so nice.
It's easier said than done, but
yeah, I think sometimes we're maybe not in a position to have like a liberty to listen to our hearts, but I think like baby steps. If you just listen to your heart and then take the baby steps and then open up to the universe, then you're going to get everything that's meant for you, I believe. I really do believe that.
Yeah. Yeah, me too.
Mm-hmm. So if our listeners want to get in contact with you or they want to learn more about your retreats, where can they reach you?
The easiest is to just go to my website, saralindstromphotography.com, or just Google that. And I go by the same name on Instagram and Facebook. Instagram is where I'm most active. So either of those, Sara Lindstrom Photography.
Perfect. And we'll add all of that information in our show notes.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you, Sara. That's it for our show today. Thanks for joining. Remember, you can always reach out to us on our socials, on Instagram at sisterhood_of_healing, or on TikTok at Sisterhood of Healing. We love to hear from you, so please reach out to us at any time. Thank you for journeying with us today. We'll see you next time.